Welcome to Hi-Fi. I'm Marcos, this is Kurt, and today's a big showdown of the Wharfedale Lintons to the KLH Model 5s. The KLH Model 5s retail at $3,750 Canadian, or around $3,000 American. The Wharfedale Lintons retail at $2,499 Canadian, or around $1,700 US. Quick rundown on both speakers. The KLH Model 5s are a three-way acoustic suspension design speaker featuring a 1-inch aluminum dome tweeter, 4-inch paper cone mid-range, 10-inch paper cone bass driver. Rated at 6 ohms impedance and 90.5 dB sensitivity. The Wharfedale Linton is a three-way speaker as well, bass reflex this time, rear ported, featuring a 1-inch soft dome tweeter, a 5-inch Kevlar mid-range, an 8-inch Kevlar bass driver, also rated at 6 ohms and rated at 90 dBs sensitivity.
If you watch our previous shootout video, the rules are the same. We will score what we think was the top spot in that, a 5, and we will base the other score upon that rating. The first category is build quality and overall looks. So we scored the KLH Model 5s a 5. I think when it comes to the build quality, definitely I'll say give it to the KLH Model 5s. It's just the way I think the veneer is applied, the kind of the rounded edges, just makes it more premium. Even the weight of itself, it seems like the cabin itself is a lot heavier. The grille, it's just, it really is a true throwback from something from the 70s.
There's a really close call in this category, and we gave the Wharfedale Lintons a score of 4.5. The reason why was so close, the Lintons are definitely a great looking speaker as well, and I find the quality is quite good. One thing to note though, with the square edge veneer, it just doesn't feel quite as premium as the KLH's. One thing that I really like about the Lintons though is the fact that it comes with this really solid and well-built stand.
So in the category of setup, we gave a score of 5 to the Model 5s. The reason for this is with the acoustic suspension, the design, the steel cabinet, it makes it a little bit easier to place. You can be able to move it, a little bit closer to the back wall, and it allows a little bit more for practical setups. Another thing too as well is we just had to give it the extra bonus because the manual was probably one of the best manuals, easy to follow, that we've seen in our industry. And also the last thing, we like that it does have an adjustable crossover, really making it the ability to kind of fine-tune it into your room environment.
Coming in really close with a score of 4.5 is the Wharfedale Linton. The Wharfedale Linton came in really close because they are at ear level, so it helps a lot with listening position adjustments. The reason why we did give it a 4.5 though is the fact that it is rear ported, so when it comes to setting it up in your room, you do have to have them at some distance away from the walls. The other thing to note is the Lintons do not have an adjustable crossover, so they are really set in their ways. One thing to note too, with the Lintons, you can get away with a more equilateral triangle listening position, whereas the Model 5, they recommend a little bit more distance.
So when it came to features, we scored the Model 5s a 5. The reason why we gave it a 5 is a couple of unique features. One thing is that, again, the adjustable crossover on there, so you can really dial it in. Even the color options, it has one extra color option, and you can also special order grills that come in different colors. So again, that is just another nice to have feature if it suits your room decor better. One thing I do like is I like the magnetic grills, which is a good bonus too. And with the KLH, it is pre-packaged with the stands.
Coming in with a score of 4 is the Wharfedale Lintons. We gave the Lintons a 4 because yes, they are at ear level, which is quite nice. They do come with two different colors, the walnut, the English walnut, or a all black, almost blacked out finish. Other cool feature that we do like about it is the stands that you can fit your some of your vinyl collection or your entire vinyl collection underneath. The reason why they did come in at a 4 though is the fact that that adjustable crossover on the Model 5s is definitely a shining point. With the Wharfedale Lintons, unfortunately it doesn't come with that. The other thing to note too, the grills are mounted, pressure mounted with push pins, meaning they're quite hard to remove if you like running your speakers with or without grills. Wharfedale does recommend playing them with the grills on, but I've known people that like them without the grills.
So in our low volume test, we scored the KLH a 5. And the reason for this is just the amount of detail. When you're picking up, especially at those really low, at the 55 to 60 dBs, you can just hear a lot more. I think because the speaker is just more transparent. And so when you're doing that late night listening, this would definitely suit you a lot better.
Coming in at a score of 3.5 is the Wharfedale Lintons. We gave the Lintons a 3.5 because we found that on the top end they're not quite as defined as we would like, especially at those really low volume levels. We found that there seems to be some information missing from our listening position. One thing to note with the Model 5s with that adjustability, you can really tweak it, whereas with the Lintons at that low volume you really can't tweak that sound.
So in our high volume test, we gave the Model 5s, again, a 5. And the reason for this, it was really close. But I think just the KLH just had the just a little bit of edge in terms of the response. And also, too, the ability to just fill and really pressurize the room. Especially at the higher volume, because it just sounded a lot more controlled when it comes to the bass.
The Lintons came in really close at that high volume test, coming in at a 4.5. The reason why we gave the Lintons a 4.5, they actually keep up quite well, especially at those higher volume levels. The bass is strong, it's punchy, but it's just not quite as controlled and articulated as the KLHs. We found the Lintons are also really easy to listen to at high volume levels and never get too aggressive on the ear. When it came time to listening to the Model 5s and the Lintons, we listened to a wide variety of music as always, but we did 4 distinct categories with this test. First category being jazz. The song we picked today for jazz is by the legendary Japanese jazz artist Sadao Watabe. The song is called Just Cruising. And that's exactly what the song does. It just cruises. At the start of the song, it starts off really, really quiet. Just some minor staging. You can kind of pinpoint everything going on in the stage. And then at the 2-minute mark, it jumps right in with a big bass tap and then some really closely mic'd flute. And it just flows right through that song. Nice long song, and I find it's timeless.
So when it came to this test, we gave the KLH a 5. In the song, kind of when the bass kicks in at that 2-minute mark, I like how it really starts off, and that first kick and that impression, again, the bass on there, it just did it that little bit better. One thing that really stood out was the flute, and the reason why is because when they're doing this recording, they really want to bring it out as much of this flute as possible because it really takes center stage in this track. So what they did was they mic'd it really close. And what you should be really feeling when you listen to that flute, there should be that, almost that top end kind of brightness that you get, and it was really a lot more apparent and a lot more accurate and lifelike on the Model 5s. And another thing on that wood tone, kind of that wood block, which I think it is, that was coming in just on the right side of this performance, you can hear more that texturing and almost just that feeling that kind of dissipates into the room when they're hitting it. Again, a lot more apparent on the KLH. With that being said, we still scored the Wharfedale a 4.5. So the reason why this came so close at a 4.5 is sonically, if you were to take it, the KLH just, I think overall on this track, sounded better. But I know there's a lot of you guys that actually might prefer, especially on jazz, the sound of the Wharfedale. Because there's something about having things not so as precise, not so transparent and detailed that the Wharfedale gives you. And it gives you just this feeling where you really just relaxes you more. I was even making that comment that it's when listening through jazz, it sounded more spa-like, and it's just because of that more warmish tone that it gives. And again, some of you may even like that better.
After we were done cruising, we jumped straight into the club and listened to some EDM. The song we listened to today was done by Underworld in 1994. The song is called Skyscraper, I Love You. And honestly, it's kind of like a love song to skyscrapers. So in this love song to skyscrapers, you can kind of see where it's going. It's going to be nice and sharp like a skyscraper. So concrete, glass structure, right? Nice sharp tones. And this is exactly what comes through in the song. So nice clean bass punches, clean and really sharp upper tones. The rhythm really captures you.
So in this genre EDM, we gave this Model 5 a 5. And a lot of the reason for this is, for both of us, and I think for a lot of people, when you're listening to EDM, you want something to get that present of that quicker sounding, like that quicker attack. It just seems to really kind of like energize the feeling when you're listening to EDM. And I just think that the KLH definitely did that better. Coming in at the 225 mark, especially when that bass hits, that bass was just, again, it was a lot more articulate. And even on the kind of that synthesized shaker sound that they have in there, you're able to really distinctly hear all the tones. And I guess, again, because in EDM they're using it to energize the feeling, it just felt like the KLH definitely just energized again on this track. With the Wharfedales, it still came in at 4. And what I found neat about this in this track is, when the way they layer it and the way it should sound on the vocals is you've got the vocals kind of in the middle, and on the right, when that person's coming in, or I can't remember what he was saying, but anything
skyscraper.
Yes,
I love you.
Yeah, saying skyscraper. It actually sounded a lot more forward. It actually sounded more, I would say, more layered or 3-dimensional on the Wharfedales, and that's why we still scored it quite high. But it's interesting. I would like to actually know if they did that on purpose at the recording studio.
After listening to Underworld, the weather took a drastic turn and we're starting to listen to rock. And the song that we chose today is from the original Crow soundtrack from the movie. So Kurt and Sam today were reminiscing about this movie, on how dark and how kind of creepy the movie is. And the song we picked was by Nine Inch Nails, and it's called Dead Soul. The song really has some pretty creepy tones to it. It really makes it sound pretty dark, like you're walking in like a dimly lit forest or something like that. Kind of gives me the shivers a little bit.
For this genre, we scored the KLH a 5. In this track, it's really neat. And part of that is because they basically took the drums and they widened it across throughout the whole stage, all between the speakers. And then the guitarist, really, it's kind of like right in the middle. And it's neat because it kind of like it's kind of like the guitarist is just surrounded by these drums. Why we gave the KLH a 5 is because when you're listening to this, it's just, again, the accuracy when the guitar comes in, you can really hear kind of that zing that it's supposed to be on the guitar work. And when the drums and the bass hits, it was a lot more cleaner. And the resolution that you're hearing, for example, in the kind of like in the toms, you can tell what they did is they actually loosened the skin to create a lot less kind of like reverb or decay that goes back into the room. And you can pick up those little details more on the KLH. So the reason why we gave the Wharfedale a 4.5, which is quite close, is this is going to be a matter of taste. Just like we talk about in the EDM, here in the rock, I know, just dealing with a lot of customers in the past, going all the way from 20 years ago, a lot of people would always ask me, how do I make my rock a little bit more easier to listen to? And I think on the Wharfedale, this is one of them. Some still might prefer that more accuracy and openness of this, but by having this kind of extra warmth that's in the Wharfedale, when it comes to rock, it might make it that much more easier to listen to. So this is something that I would really highly suggest, if you do listen to a lot of rock, is have a side-by-side comparison between the two.
After crawling out of the deep dark woods, we jumped into some classical music. So we listened to a composition by Claude Debussy. The recording artist is Haruma Sato, and the song is called Cello Sonata in Minor D. Of course, classical can be quite difficult to find sometimes, but hopefully we simplified it so you're able to find this recording, because it is definitely a good one. When listening to this, it's a really intimate setting, and I really liked how closely mic'd it was, which is pretty uncommon for classical recording. So when you're listening to the cello, you're really hearing the textures of the celloist. Also, how intimate the piano, it almost seems like it's just a few feet away in this recording.
So in this genre, we gave the KLH a 5.
Did we really?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And classical is one of really, really difficult to play. And this one, maybe it's not as difficult, because it's usually what happens is when taking the recordings and taking all their flank microphones, the omnipolar, omnidirectional microphones, what they do is they usually take it as if you're sitting way deep into the back of the stage, especially on the big orchestra stuff. That's why classical is also so hard, because it's really hard to create a proper stage and everything. So or even hearing all the different details and instruments and the strings, and in this case, in this recording, it was a little bit closer. When comparing the two, and that's the biggest thing, is when you're looking at the texturing of the strings in classical music, and you're looking at all those little nuances, the KLH was just able to really distinct things and put things in its place, and just overall bring out more life and accuracy to the reproduction. And for the Lintons, we scored that a 4, and because it wasn't able to bring out as much when it comes to a lot of those details and a lot of those aspects. However, though, again, when we put them on, we were almost going to give it a 4.5. Again, just because to have that a little bit more, that warmish sound and character, just sometimes there's a lot of people I think that might like it, might even prefer that.
We performed our classic measurements test on both the KLH Model 5s and the Wharfedale Lintons compared to our bass speaker, which is a PMC.
So I would say overall our listening impressions really do line up. So when we're looking at it, one of the biggest things I can take from this is in that 2 to 6K range. That's where that warmth comes in from the Wharfedale, which you can clearly see here on the graph. You can see anything starting to go from above the 10K mark. It kind of starts rolling off again, just adding to that warmth. And when compared to our baseline, our PMC, again, that is a more studio type speaker, you can see it's quite flat on the top end, and both speakers actually kind of roll off from there, just giving you again maybe that more sense of that vintage warmth that we're getting from these two speakers.
Counting up the final tally, the KLH Model 5 scored a perfect score of 45 points, and the Wharfedale Lintons came in at 38 points. Considering that the KLH Model 5s are 30% more than the Wharfedale Lintons, they should be a clear winner.
Looking at the comments from our Linton before, it is incredible how polarizing these two are. Just in terms of how people are like, the KLH is way better. Nope, the Linton is going to be way better. And and you can really see that in our previous video. So why is that? I think at the end of the day, it really depends on the kind of sound you're looking for. Yes, there's a price difference, and in my opinion, in terms of performance, if you were to base it just based on our reference, which is a more studio speaker, the KLH comes more closer to that reference. Something that maybe a musician or someone in the studio would look for a quality in a speaker. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Lintons wouldn't suit you. And I think that's why there's this polarization. Because with the Lintons, there's a lot of people out there that maybe are looking for that, maybe that little bit extra warmth. To me, the Wharfedale sounds more like a vintage speaker and looks like a vintage speaker. The KLH definitely it's got a hint of that vintage sound. And yes, the looks, more so, it does sound a lot closer to a modern speaker.
If you're still undecided and you want a little bit more information on either of these speakers, we did release individual review videos on both models. So click on the link below and we'll see you in there.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.